From IBMTV, International Broadcast Media, this is American Politics, a unique broadcast bringing you in depth discussions with American leaders in political thought, analysis, and insight, and real world experience. Without any agenda or traditional gotcha journalism, I invite you, the audience, to share a conversation with our guests. I am Bill Trezevant, your host, and I would like to welcome our guest today to the show. Welcome, Sam. How are you?
I'm great, Bill. How are you?
Good. If you don't mind, I'm going to take a moment and go over just help our audience get acquainted with you. May I?
Sure.
Okay. Well, our guest today is Sam Capitano, Special International Representative to LIUNA for the New England region. That is the Labor's International Union of North America and the business manager for the Upstate New York Laborers District Council. Sam Capitano has a long track record as a prominent labor leader. He is well versed in all aspects of the public and private construction industry. Sam represents over 10,000 active and retired union members. Sam is a trustee on multiple pension funds, health and welfare funds, training funds, as well as LIUNA New York, which is the union's political action committee. We are honored here to have him with us today. So welcome, Sam.
Thank you, Bill. I'm honored.
Okay, how are you today? How are you feeling?
Great. I had a big Bills win yesterday, so I'm feeling a little upbeat.
Okay, you remember this is not gotcha journalism, Sam, so we won't be talking about football games.
Okay.
In any event, if you could just share with the audience a sense of how you came to such a prominent position, take such a lead role in the labor movement, and where you are now and the kinds of things that you do.
I became a construction worker, a union construction worker in 1984 for Labor's Local 210 in Buffalo, New York. And in 1996, the Justice Department imposed a trusteeship on our international and our local union. And from that day on, I became an activist for membership rights, union rights, labor issues, and
you rose to the ranks, ultimately become being elected business manager of Labor's Local 210. Is that right?
That's correct. I from out in the field, I was a labor foreman, a labor steward, and in 2007 I was elected. I ran for the office of business manager in my local union in Buffalo, and I won the election by 22 votes.
Yeah, and now you are a special international representative for LIUNA. So you serve in the executive leadership of LIUNA. Is that correct?
I am a district council business manager, which is I have 7 subordinate local unions underneath my umbrella, and I was appointed a special international rep for the New England region of LIUNA.
Okay. Well, what I want to start out with, and perhaps for the purpose of our audience, because we have both a domestic audience and we also have an international audience, and they may not be familiar with the state of labor or unionized labor in America today. Approximately what percentage of the American workforce are members of a union? Do you happen to know?
Well, I actually just read an article today that said the combined public and private sector union membership makes up about 13.5% of the labor market. And if I remember correctly, I believe the private sector has about 3.5 to 4.5% market share.
Okay. I guess on that point, unions have been declining in relative influence over a number of years. So those numbers is that trend continuing, that union membership and involvement is lessening as the decades move on, or are unions still important and experiencing a growth in the workforce?
No, that we haven't been experiencing growth. Maybe in some areas that unions are starting to become more prominent, but in established areas, union membership has been falling a little bit. Yes.
Okay. Now, do you is that what do you ascribe as the reasons for that you see? Are there any? Is it any one thing, or is it just a multiple
Well,
thing?
it's a combination of um, of things. Mainly, the laws are not favorable in the United States for organizing, for
Okay.
union organizing. The National Labor Relation Board has been gutted, especially under this administration, and the as far as union participation, the employers really have the upper hand as far as the law goes today. And ever since the LaGuardia Act was
Hmm.
passed, it's been a an
Okay. Okay. Well, let me ask you this then. We are here in the closing days of the 2020 presidential election. Um, and given your experience, and you've been an active member now for what, over 20 years uh,
over
in the union,
35 years, over
35 years.
36 years. Yes.
Okay. Um, what is labor looking for in this election? Now, LIUNA the international has endorsed a candidate in this race. Who is that candidate, and why did LIUNA endorse the candidate?
Joe Biden. Biden has a proven track record for labor rights, labor issues, infrastructure spending, and jobs, the creation of jobs.
Okay,
And
what is the union? From a union perspective, what are you looking for in terms of this election? I mean, uh, it's surprising that there have been very few details on specific things that would affect your industry. For example, what do you think of the current state of infrastructure and uh, and those kinds of issues? I mean, are they even important, or what are we doing?
oh, absolutely. The public spending on infrastructure has been nil. We've been promised an infrastructure spending bill since uh, 2016. We haven't had anything to resemble that. The only way the administration wanted to hear anything about infrastructure was if they were to repeal Davis Bacon for an infrastructure bill. That would be the compromise. And the Democrats in the House and Senate were not having it. It was a non starter. And
Okay, well, for our audience, can you explain what the Davis Bacon?
Davis Bacon is the prevailing rate on working projects in each area. So there's a survey done by in each area by the Department of Labor
Hmm.
for all collective bargaining agreements, and the Department of Labor for certain aspects of construction would rely on the area rate
So that they
to
standardize.
establish a prevailing rate in each area.
Okay,
And
so this
Davis Bacon is that.
okay, so that's the law requiring setting a wage for given the skills in the area and multiple factors, but then that becomes the prevailing wage for that area, correct?
That's correct.
Okay, and then that would be the wage that employers would have to pay union members.
In the construction industry, yes.
Okay, okay, so
Well, it
that
would on any public project financed by the city, town, county,
uh
state, feds would
okay,
have to pay a prevailing rate
okay,
established in each area.
okay,
So it's
so
only on public finance
no,
projects.
no, I understand that, but I'm trying to figure out what the administration was doing. So the administration wanted to get rid of the Davis-Bacon Act, and then what would that have done as a practical effect to wages for union members?
Oh, it would have been a race to the bottom. And instead of quality, productivity, efficiency reigning the day as far as bidding a public project, what would happen then is they would be actually racing to the bottom on wages and benefits for the workers, and area standards would be neglected.
Okay, then with that in mind, what is labor looking for in this election? I mean, and I just kind of want to ask this. I don't really remember. I mean, your endorsed candidate, Joe Biden, did serve for 8 years as vice president, and often uh, holds forth the fact that he was the vice president with former President Obama. But I don't seem to remember during the 8 years
Mhm.
of the Obama-Biden administration any major infrastructure bills.
Oh, there was a $48 billion in transportation infrastructure that created over 42,000 jobs that Biden was instrumental in overseeing on
Mm,
behalf of
mm, okay,
Obama.
and when was that?
That was in, I believe that was right in the beginning of 2008,
Okay,
right after the crisis,
okay,
2009, actually, 2010.
okay. Those were the shovel-ready projects that the
That,
administration was
that's
looking.
correct. Yes.
Okay. Now, this current administration, besides offering a repeal of the prevailing wage agreement, what else have they done for labor?
They haven't done anything. There hasn't been any. I mean, in the industry that I dance in, there hasn't been anything, any infrastructure bills passed, especially in New York, where we live, where we've been punished for not supporting
Okay.
this
Well,
this
then let me ask you
administration.
this: then what makes the labor movement so fond of Biden? I mean, is there anything that you can believe that Biden will do? Because quite frankly,
Oh,
what?
if
No, Mr. Capitano, I just want to ask you this: that right now, when it comes to public projects, America, I think, is on the brink of being broke with all of the stimulus packages and everything else, and our national debt. I mean, how are we even going to afford any kind of comprehensive infrastructure uh, program that would benefit labor if we're broke?
well, as you're probably aware, every time we have a Republican administration, we go broke, and then the Democrats have to come in, raise the taxes, cut spending, be responsible, and in the meantime, they go on their little hiatus of destroying labor. In the meantime, on the right, and Biden actually has a $2 trillion infrastructure plan that you could check on his website that actually addresses everything that labor in the construction industry would need, and it actually addresses the National Labor Relation Board. It addresses funding for bridges, water, environment, renewables.
Hmm. Well, okay, and approximately how big is that package?
That's a $2 trillion package.
Okay. Now, then I want to ask there have been a number of reports that say that there's a disconnect between uh, the senior leadership of various unions and their rank and file members. Could you can you talk to us about that issue? If
Sure,
it's true, if
sure.
it's not true, and what's actually going on in terms of this election?
Well, there is a disconnect, and I have to say that the membership does not see what goes on behind the scenes in protecting their current way of life and their current standard of living. And we do not enjoy coming out in opposition of what our members like to support. But we, as union leaders, know firsthand how vulnerable we are right now and
Hmm.
how vindictive this administration is, and their track record as far as dismantling union rights, labor rights. I mean, to be honest, we have a real estate developer in the White House who's well aware of the construction industry and union wages. And we have a vice president in the White House who also abolished prevailing rate in Indiana. So, me as a union leader, I have to express to my members what it is I know to be true. And LIUNA supports Biden and Harris.
Okay, but then let me ask you then if that's the case, why is there a disconnect? Because quite frankly, let me kind of look at it this way. Everybody is talking about this election, and it is obviously high stakes. It would be in any year, but this year particularly so. But when we start looking at some of the swing states, when you start looking at places like Wisconsin or Michigan in particular, that has a very prominent union voting base, and then also perhaps in Pennsylvania. Why is there a disconnect between what the leaders of various unions, and I'm not just necessarily limiting it to LIUNA, but why is there a disconnect between what the leaders are saying and then what the actual rank and file members see and believe and how they're voting?
Well, I mean, I have to give the Republicans credit for their campaign of misinformation. I mean, it's been an assault on the truth since the whole time, even before Obama was in office.
Hmm.
And our members have been fed. There's been a disconnect between the city and rural areas,
Uh-huh.
and the social issues are reigning the day. And there's a lot of people that have fallen prey and victim to
Hmm.
this misinformation campaign and have allowed this division to fester and take hold. And when our membership are actually voting against their own economic best interest, when they think about guns, when they think about abortion, when they think about whatever, Black Lives Matter, when they think about any of these issues of the day, that the right takes and just pokes the bear in the zoo about these issues, and it hits home to these people because they're not really interacting with
Hmm.
the majority of this melting pot of our country, and the division that has taken place has really taken hold. And a lot of our members, they're not from the city,
Okay.
and and a lot of our members, they don't understand growing up the way we grew up in the cities,
Uh-huh.
how we're all one family. And it's disheartening, but I will go to my grave championing this cause and this
Okay.
election with this candidate and this vice president,
All right.
knowing that I know what goes on behind the scenes, and I know how vulnerable we are and what's at stake for our
Okay.
existence.
Okay. Well, then let me ask you. In various elections, unions have taken a prominent role in terms of backing people. I remember the firefighters are certainly influential, and when they make an endorsement and they pick a candidate. In a lot of the swing states or in the states that are in dispute, what's the labor movement doing? I mean, is there a coordinated kind of approach to convincing the voters? I mean, we are about 36 days or so out from this important decision, and and so how are you guys looking at it? What are you guys doing, and what do you think of the electorate then?
Well, I think labor, and when I speak of labor, I speak of the industry that I live in, and it's the construction industry. So we're talking the building trades, the construction building trades.
Okay.
So if you take
And
a look at these swing
actually,
states, you'll
actually,
see. I'm sorry,
no,
Bill.
actually, I apologize, but for the purposes of our audience, could you explain what the building trades encompasses? So we have
So
labor, and then what else?
the construction building trades of the United States is made up of about 17 to 18 trade trade unions. You look at the Labor's International Union,
Uh-huh.
the operating engineers,
Hmm.
the bricklayers,
Uh-huh.
the masons, the
Electricians.
the plumbers, the
Mhm.
electricians.
Mhm.
Uh,
And just so for purposes of our audience, when just to bring it down to their lives, when they're driving down the road and it's construction season, the guys that are doing the work, those are your members, aren't they?
a lot of them are, yes.
And when they see buildings going up and being built from the ground up, down, starting with the digging and then the laying of concrete, those are your members as well, isn't that right?
A lot of those
Okay.
projects, they are, yes.
All right. And so, in many respects, the wages, this workforce we see every day in our lives, but we just don't realize how their lives are being impacted. Now, uh, I want to ask what one to get back to what is the union doing for these next 36 days? And when you talk about the industry, certainly speak about yours, but more importantly, how the economy has affected these members, because it seems to me that they are in the those wages place them within reach of having a middle class lifestyle, but it's all being uh, well attacked and or shrunk. I'm listening, Sam.
Well, we in New York, in upstate New York, we've done pretty well throughout this COVID uh, period. And our hours are actually above last year's hours from
Okay.
the beginning of this time. But again, we have an established workforce with employers and members that uh, actually shine in times like these. And
Okay.
if you remember 911, there was a lot of building trades members that were first responders.
Uh-huh.
So just like that, that time we're in a crisis at this time, and a lot of our employers have been called to arms to finish finish a lot of these projects and clean up a lot of these hazardous waste sites and maybe a lot of these infectious disease control sites.
Hmm.
So, but on top of that, with the work we already had pending, we've done pretty well. So
Okay.
we're
Well,
worried about with budgets and deficits going forward for next year and the years beyond.
okay. But I guess the question then is this election, how is it going to make a difference? And or why? Well, why aren't unions more prominent in their advocacy around the states? Because look, Nevada has a high union participation rate. Michigan, and then there are some other states as well. But why isn't more of a prominent role? I mean, what do you think has happened that uh, labor's voice hasn't been as prominent as been in the past, particularly when we are dealing with the very jobs that create the middle class, Sam?
I think it. I think it's going unnoticed. I really do. If you take a look at the polling,
Uh-huh.
you'll see over the last 6 months that Biden, especially the last 4 months,
Hmm.
that Biden has increased and widened his lead in these swing states. Now, Florida's a little close, but if you look at Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, Nevada, I don't even think is close. And you take a look at behind the scenes labor in the building trades, especially, we have many members out there
Okay.
pounding the pavement, and and I think they're getting the message home that we can't afford another 4 years of this. We've been promised infrastructure, we've been promised so much, and we haven't had anything. And our standard of living is at risk under this administration. The only reason they haven't pulled the trigger is because they know how many building trades members have supported them in this past election. And this is one vindictive man that once if
Okay.
if he were to ever win a
Okay.
second
Well,
term.
okay. Well, it certainly. Look, I mean, I understand certainly that characterization, but I guess the question is, what are, at least with regard to unions, what are the motivating kinds of issues that would swing them to? We know which ones that you've enunciated that that the Republicans use to influence them. What are some of the arguments that the Democrats can use to influence your members?
Well, there's already been a proposal on the table, and Meadows and Pence are well versed in these areas, that the prevailing rate in Davis-Bacon are determined through the Department of Labor. They want to eliminate the surveys, wage surveys from the Department of Labor, which they can do without a vote by just an executive order to the Bureau of Labor Statistics. If they were to do that after this election, say goodbye to prevailing rate, say goodbye to union participation in the construction industry, Davis Bacon will be gone. Surveys wouldn't even be done. It's over. We'd have to restructure our whole game plan. Our pensions would be underfunded. Our pensions would be on the verge of being insolvent. And there would be an absolute disaster in the union construction industry. Not even the union construction industry. The non-union do not even understand how much they benefit from the prevailing rate that is set by each local union in each area that has a prevailing rate in Davis-Bacon law.
Okay, and tell me about that connection, because a lot of times people think that unions are just insular and that they only affect unions, and people then come along and say unions are bad for whatever reasons. They cost too much. I mean, there's always a complaint. But what I think I hear you saying is that uh, the presence of unions actually has a beneficial impact on people who are non-union in terms of their wages. Explain that some more, please.
Well, we have relationships with our non-union employers too, good non-union employers that pay their members the proper rates, the area standards, and their members and employees are happy. Those are the kind of employers I have no problem with. Okay.
Mhm.
The problem I have is when these non-union employers come in and they undermine the area standards. They don't want to pay the prevailing rate. Now, the way that non-union members benefit from prevailing rate is when they work on a public project, that
Mhm.
rate is set. And the reason that these prevailing rates were uh, adopted were to stop a race to the bottom in bidding and level the playing field on the labor rates, and now allow that the quality, productivity, product merchandising,
Uh-huh.
all that to make an effect, make the bid low bid come in, not lower the area wages so that you could race to the bottom, bring in out of town workers, undermine the area standard, undermine the middle class. So this is how the non-union benefit from the local unions that establish the prevailing rate in each area that they work in. On
Okay. Well,
public works, I'd like to see what they get paid on private projects, but I know what they get paid on public projects.
okay. Now, aside from the infrastructure bill, what else are you looking for from, uh, well, in the next 4 years? If I mean, does it really? I know it's a basic question, but let me just ask you: does it really make a difference if Donald Trump is elected versus Joe Biden?
Absolutely.
I know it's basic, but okay. And then, if it does, then in what ways would a Biden administration be different? I mean, what policies besides an infrastructure bill, which I think everybody kind of throws around infrastructure, and you have a plan for it. But what other things would you see or that the labor movement would benefit from if it was, in fact, a Biden administration?
Well, we already know about health coverage. Pre-existing conditions are going out the window with this administration. Although Trump all of a sudden did an executive order on banning discrimination against pre-existing conditions. So I think maybe he found religion or it was just
No,
convenient.
Sam, on that point, that was just an executive order, and on no the week after November 3rd, the following week, the Trump administration is arguing a case in front of the Supreme Court to gut Obamacare.
I'm totally aware. So I mean, these are things our members. I don't know if they block them out, but don't understand. In the construction industry, opioid abuse and suicide is extremely high, and without these these minimum requirements for HMOs to cover the the minimum effects for health coverage, our members don't understand how much is at stake here. We have the best health coverage at the lowest prices because of our volume of membership. If we were to, and the Affordable Care Act has helped us bring down and tamp down the premiums. In total opposition of what they say, it increases premiums, increases cost. Totally opposite. So we understand health coverage is one aspect that Biden would bring to the table. The other is the reappointment of labor friendly people on this National Labor Relation Board. All these appointments by this administration, they're not of quality people. They're antagonistic appointments. They're not in the best interest of the National Labor Relation Board. They're not in the best interest of Occupational Safety and Health Administration. They're not in the best interest of the Department of Labor with Antonio Scalia's son as the head of the Department of Labor. It's just these are totally contradictory appointments, antagonistic appointments that our members need to understand. This is what we know on the front lines. This Mark Meadows, he's no friend of anybody. He he
And
is a right wing Freedom Caucus
Okay. And you're referring to Mark Meadows, who is currently the chief of staff with.
That's correct. That's correct.
Okay. So outside of that, does and I'm really curious about this point as well. Everybody seems to think that the Green New Deal, as proposed by some leaders for as a prescription for our future economy, that somehow that is that and the labor movement are mutually exclusive. How do you evaluate the Green New Deal program? Do you see it as a potential benefit to the labor movement, either with jobs and construction, or won't it have any impact whatsoever on your members?
Well, we're involved in many renewable projects, solar panel farms, wind farms. We're involved in all that. But the when you hear the Green New Deal and you have a person that's targeted like AOC is by the right, and in some cases rightfully so, but we're our members are more middle of the road people. We're not far right, we're not far left, we're middle of the road. So the impact, we welcome as much work as possible, and if the Green New Deal were to bring more work to the area, we welcome that. But we all have to be realistic here that
Mhm.
natural gas, it is not going away. It's not going away. Now, you either want 100% of everything or you get 100% of nothing. And the way that the right has targeted this Green New Deal, they've done an effective job. And I think maybe its champion has done an effective job being a target of the other side, too. But we welcome all renewable energies, all the Green New Deal. But we also, pipelines and natural gas is a big portion of what we do in the construction industry. And it's not going away, and we need it and
Okay.
we
Well,
welcome it. So
okay.
there has to be a compromise. The reason
Okay.
Joe Biden is the elected candidate is because of these the 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 left has ambushed this party. They also create the left who couldn't vote for Hillary Clinton because she wasn't pure enough for them. Also caused what we have in the White House today. So we could deviate and go off on that subject if you like. But those people that voted for Stein, I hope they like the next three Supreme Court picks that have just happened because of their lack of voting for the unpure candidate that Hillary Clinton was.
Okay. Okay. So I guess I have two questions, and I'll just mention them, and then you can pick which one you want to answer. First was if you could kind of explain the impact of the aborted pipeline that was supposed to come from Canada down to the United States, and what
The
that.
Northern Access Pipeline by National Fuel Gas
Well,
up
hang on,
to the
hang on.
north.
That's one question. The other question is, how do you see the Supreme Court picks as affecting the labor movement? Which one do you want to talk about?
Well,
Let's talk about the pipeline.
the
Okay.
pipeline
Yeah.
has won every court battle all the way through. So
Hmm.
that looks like that may be a go, that Northern Access. But look at the time frame it has taken. We've been advocating for this for probably 10 years now, this Northern Access Pipeline. Been such a pain. We have a homegrown company, National Fuel Gas. Fracking is banned in New York State. I just reading today that it's going to be banned in 2024 from California. So I don't know how they plan on powering
Okay,
the
well, see,
world.
okay, well, see, then that gets me right to this question, and that is that with potentially the Green New Deal, that I think as part of that, one of the provisions is to stop all fracking, and Biden, I believe, has that position that part of his plan would be to stop fracking, and
No,
that
that's not true.
okay. Then what is true about that?
Well, if you see that most recently Biden came out and said that was a mistake, saying that he agrees with banning fracking. That is not his position on. He's not banning fracking. So,
Okay,
but the Green New Deal, um, when they get enough votes to pass that, then I'll be concerned. Okay, but they
okay,
don't.
you'll be concerned because it's going to hurt jobs. Then is that correct?
No, in the pipeline industry, it will. Yes. I can't speak intelligently on if the offset of the new renewable jobs would offset the loss of the pipeline jobs, but These are good middle class paying jobs that I've made a living on in the past in my career out in the field, and I know many of my members in upstate New York have made a great living doing pipeline work. So if they have a better, cleaner, less expensive alternative to natural gas, I'd like to see it.
Okay. Okay. Well, then what other beside okay, so that you'd be pushing for all types of infrastructure. You'd be looking to maintain the protections of the Affordable Care Act. What other issues is the labor movement seeking?
Well, we need to revamp the whole National Labor Relation Act to actually protect labor and workers. It's just, if
Okay.
you
Well,
look at Canada, they seem to have pretty good protections and laws up there.
okay. Well, let's just drill down because I mean, you say that, but some people are going to say, "Well, what do you actually mean?" I mean, what's wrong with the NLRA, Sam?
Well, right now, the elections, the it be, you were able to at one point
Uh huh.
get get a majority of cards signed by a bargaining group,
Okay.
and then they would have to be recognized. That was stopped, and now there has to be an election, a secret ballot election, which allows for employer intimidation. The restrictions of employer involvement in elections have been totally eviscerated. There needs to be.
So, So you're saying that there are more shenanigans by employers when it comes to the actual organizing, and that it's been made more difficult by the recent appointments with the National Labor Relations
Oh,
Board. Do I
absolutely.
have that right?
Yes. And if you take a look at some of the most recent decisions at the National Labor Relation Board, it is totally anti-labor. And if you take a look at the actual makeup of that board, they're not. I don't see any labor champion as any appointment from this administration.
Okay. So, uh, healthcare, the economy, well, infrastructure, the National Labor Relations Board. What other issues are important and motivating the labor movement these days? And wait, are they regionally specific? I mean, are there
I
different issues?
think they are regionally
Okay.
specific.
Well,
If you look at New York State, people complain about our high taxes, but uh, we do have high wages too. I'd like to see who matches up to what we make in wages across this country. So, and if you look at what we pay in taxes to the federal government compared to what we get back, we're supporting a lot of this our other states, brothers and sisters, which I don't have a problem with. But when you have a president who has turned our Constitution upside down and has totally made a mockery of
okay.
past historic. Uh, Go
Okay.
ahead.
Well, okay. Then what are the other issues? If they are different regionally, what are some of the other issues that our audience should be aware of, and that the labor movement sees as significant?
Well, I think we pretty much hit home on most of them. The Davis-Bacon Act. The other most important issue that Mitch McConnell has neglected throughout this whole process of re-stimulating the economy, the
What?
it is the lack of funding the Pension Benefit Guaranty Corporation because of the multi-employer pension plans that have, for no fault of their own, have been affected by this downturn in the economy and the market. The
Okay.
lack of contributions, the lack of investment returns have underfunded these pensions, and they have no problem giving corporations bailouts, the airlines bailouts. But when it came to the working man's pension, there was they they were not having they actually nixed bills because the Democrats in the House were championing a PBGC bailout and a multi-employer pension fund bailout during this downturn in the
Okay.
economy, and the McConnell and the Senate Republicans were not having it.
Okay. For the purpose of our audience, just explain to them what this multi-employer pension fund, and why is it so important? Why is it underfunded? I know that you said it, but quite frankly, Sam, uh, you are a subject matter expert in this area, and the average American isn't. And so I guess the question for them is, why is that important? Why do I care? It hasn't affected me. And so why would I even be worried about it?
Well, if you, there are two forms of pensions in the construction industry.
Okay.
Okay. The reason we're called a multi-employer plan is because our members work for multiple employers during a year, maybe through their lifetime, multiple employers. So there's a pension fund for each local union that is called a multi-employer pension plan. So these multi-employer pension plans have been, as work has been drying up, especially during this downturn in the economy,
Uh-huh.
we've picked up. But with the downturn in investments returns and with the downturn in hours, it just exacerbated a problem that already existed. Now the
Okay, no, but you say that, and I don't know, but maybe I'm just being a lunch bucket about this. But the stock market has been soaring. So how can you say that there hasn't been a return on the investment, Sam?
well, the stock market has not been soaring. It the stock market, if you look at it from the last 4 years, what's the average return that it's been posting? I what is it? 5, 6%?
Okay, well, I
Oh,
mean,
okay.
well,
So I mean, it's near its historic highs. I
that's
get that,
that's what
but
everybody's arguing.
it's been at historic highs year after year since the financial crisis has ended. Now there may be a disconnect from Wall Street to Main Street with 30 million people still unemployed, but that's
Mhm.
another subject. Let me explain the multi-employer pension benefit
Okay,
fund.
please,
Now,
please.
a defined benefit fund plan, pension plan, is a defined benefit. A defined contribution is a 401k. So a defined benefit pension is something you contribute, let's say $5 an hour for, and you get $100 credit for that year for the rest of your life. So if you
Okay,
work, if you get $100 credit for 30 years, you get $3,000 a month for the rest of your life. That is a defined benefit that you'll get the rest of your life. These defined benefit pension plans have been underfunded. Now,
oh, so then they can't meet their contractual obligations to the retirees once the retirees, well, once an active member retires.
that's correct. That's
Okay.
what, while the liability, the unfunded liability keeps growing and growing as these plans mature.
Okay. Now, is that something that the federal government can fix, or is it? Let me
Yes,
take a step back. Let me try this way. So, the Pension Benefit Guaranty Corporation, they do what then? When
they
you have these funds?
oversee they oversee the health and solvency of challenged pension plans in the multi-employer industry and single employer industry too.
Okay. So, do they bail out these pension plans? Do they
They
loan money? I mean, what do they do?
well, they prevent them from going insolvent. And by bailing them out, they guarantee 1/3 of the benefit accrued by each participant if the pension plan ends up projected to be insolvent and the PBGC comes in and takes over that plan. Then the plan is reduced 2/3.
Okay. So it results in a loss of benefits and such. But see, and then this is the disconnect. Earlier, when you were talking about Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell not bailing out the Pension Benefit Guaranty Corporation, listen, if all they do is they come in and they take over these insolvent pension funds, then why would we want to bail out the Pension Benefit Guaranty Corporation? Because all they're going to do is take over these funds and then cut the benefits to the retirees.
Well, that's what we're trying to prevent with the proposed legislation is to restore the funding status of the Pension Benefit Guaranty Corporation.
So they would
And
be able to cover the unfunded liabilities. Is that what you said?
yes, yes. Now,
Okay.
I am not totally in depth on the exact verbatim of
No.
the law, but the intent is to shore up the health of these multi-employer pension plans that are challenged
Okay.
and more than challenged because
Okay.
some of these plans could rescue themselves and they have. And some of these plans have had exposure to Madoff, some of them have had exposure through the financial crisis, and some of them have had exposure during the downturn in this pandemic. So,
Okay.
and who knows, uh, how diversified some of these plans are, and how hurt they were by the COVID. But these.
Okay. Well, but so the downside and why I, as just a non-union person in America, the reason I guess I hear you saying that the reason I ought to be worried is because if these pension funds fail, then we're going to have a whole bunch of individuals who have no source of income,
Or
or
just relying on Social Security the rest of their life, and they've worked their whole life in an industry and contributed into a defined benefit pension plan, and now their pensions are reduced 2/3.
okay, no, I certainly hear that. So that would just be another economic shock to the system. Do you happen to know, and I, because I don't know this answer, how many retirees are covered by, well, that would potentially be affected by,
I think the number is close to 10 million, if not more.
so that's 10 million people just with one piece of legislation that Mitch McConnell has
Holy,
brought.
yeah, and he wouldn't budge on it, and the Democrats had to abandon ship on it, just like they abandoned ship on bailing out the states in the first CARE Act.
Okay, well, when you say that they had to, bail out, did they abandon it, and why did they have to do it from your point of view?
Well, in order to get some stimulus passed to save our economy at the
Uh-huh.
beginning and the height of this pandemic,
Hmm.
um, the the multi-employer pension plan industry was left hanging again, and that's what happens when you have a Republican-controlled Senate that is not labor friendly. They have no problem. It's only called socialism when you're bailing out a working person. It's not called socialism when you're actually bailing out a corporation and using socialism to bail out a corporation. It's not that. Then is good, good community activism.
Okay, you touch upon hmm, a really interesting issue, and that is that the rise of certain Democrats, perhaps like AOC and Bernie Sanders, who call themselves Democratic Socialists or Socialist Democrats. I'm not sure if it makes a difference which way they go. How, and you've already described that your membership generally tends to be smack dab in the center of the American body politic. Now, normally we would call those individuals independents, and they are the swing voters because they make the difference when it comes to very close elections. How are your members viewing this Democratic Socialist or Socialist Democrats as a political force? I mean, do they see it as something to be demonized, or do they have a different view of it?
Well, I mean, it's split right down the middle like the rest of our country. It really is.
Okay.
And I've grown up in the city my whole life. I understand the issues. I grew up not very wealthy. Let's just
Uh-huh.
put it that way. Went to public school, grammar school, public high school.
Uh-huh.
So where my brother and I grew up, we
I,
were the minorities. So
okay.
I get it. And there's a lot of people that don't get it, and they
Okay.
see skin color, and they fall for the propaganda, and they fall for the divisiveness, and they never really getting to know the truth.
Okay.
And then when they see these riots, and they see these demonstrations, and they get mad at $15 an hour minimum wage, it hurts me, because I'm all for demonstrations. I'm all for
Uh-huh.
anybody championing the increase of their wages. And this is, I have to know my audience as a
Okay. Well, then no,
as
no.
a union official.
Okay. Well, then you raise an interesting point, and I didn't. It's a bit of a pivot, but how is the Black Lives Matter affected or had an impact in the labor movement or with unions? I mean, has it changed how the leadership is looking at things? And I want to point out something that our viewers do not know: that in Washington D.C., the international headquarters for LIUNA is on the block where the mayor of Washington painted "Black Lives Matter." Right, it's one of those buildings. You often you wonder who actually goes to work in those buildings and looks out at that plaza every day. And that's the LIUNA International. So has it affected LIUNA besides having a new crosswalk painted? Yeah.
Well, I believe it has. I think it's had an impact. I mean, it's brought awareness to some issues, and it needs to be brought to the
Okay,
attention. And
okay.
it needs, and I think the higher ups of each local union, even though we're elected
Hmm.
by our membership, we have to take the initiative to address some of these issues. And
Okay, well, listen, I mean, I had another guest on this program, former Senator Antoine Thompson, and he was talking about the role of that with regard to any infrastructure bill, that there has to be an active commitment to hiring people of color and minorities and women as so that they are participants in the economic recovery and not merely bystanders. And but his from his point of view, that there has been a historical lack of initiative by unions to diversify given the workforce. What are your views on that, and what is LIUNA doing, and how are they looking at it? Because you do have a plaza called Black Lives Matter right at your front door.
well, LIUNA is probably the most diversified local or union in the building trades. There's no question about. There's no probably. There's no question about it. Our membership is probably the most diverse of all. So that being said, um, I could only speak for New York State and then in my area that I see on a day-to-day basis.
In New
And
England.
well, the New England region, but I really don't get up in those areas too often, especially
Okay.
now. I mean, I just been an international appointed a special international rep over the last 2 years, so it's really I haven't been up in those areas much,
Mhm.
but I do know what I see in upstate New York, and we're a diverse membership. Some of the other trades are challenged.
Mhm.
Um, I gotta say that. And Antoine may be onto something there, but he knows in Buffalo that's not true.
So, I guess with some unions, the they making an effort to incorporate and diversify those unions that are challenged, or do you see any progress in that regard with regard to
Well,
the labor?
that there's multiple reasons why, and it's not the lack of effort on the union's part. I could tell you that. And if you take a look at the present state of affairs in all workforces right now, it's hard to find help. And and I don't know what it is.
Wait, is that because people aren't qualified? People aren't interested?
Well, there's
Other places? I
like I
mean, why
said, there's multiple reasons why. I know when I grew up as a kid, my grandfathers, both of them, and my father had garages that they would work out of. And, I saw that my whole life. I don't know how many of these kids are seeing that today. And also the guidance counselors have neglected the trades as a viable alternative to college for some kids who are not meant to go to college. I mean, there's a lot of intelligent people out there that that don't
Mhm.
go to college, that end
Mhm.
up in the trades, that end up as superintendents, that end up as general foremans, that end up as business owners in the construction industry. And it seems that it's been a pattern in our public school system to direct everyone to college. And also you've seen the exclusion of shop classes out of a lot of these high schools today that would normally train tradesmen
Okay.
growing up because of liability
Okay.
insurance and blah blah blah.
Okay. Um, and I certainly appreciate all of your comments. We are getting towards the end of this program. What I'd like to do is I'd like us to take a step back and kind of look at the 50,000 foot level. How much? How do you think the unions are going to break in this election? I mean, do you? I mean, and I want to recall our earlier conversation of that the seeming disconnect between what the leadership is doing and what the
Mhm.
rank and file members are doing. Because in an election this narrow, every vote really matters. And how do you see it from your vantage point in terms of what you're looking at from the labor movements?
No,
viewpoint.
I think in the construction industry we're going to have it. We're going to have our challenges going forward, educating our members. But I do think at the end of the day, you're going to see LIUNA members and many building trades members who voted
Uh-huh.
right
Uh-huh.
vote left this time, and put aside those wedge issues that have been so exploited by the right. And
Okay. So,
we're on a campaign in all the swing states right now with all the building trades locals, especially LIUNA members, going on a campaign. And I think the results are showing tremendously as the gap widens between Biden and Trump.
so you are then optimistic with
I'm
regard.
very optimistic. I'm
Okay.
very optimistic.
Well, because and it's another colleague of mine, Sasha.
Mhm.
He's an investment guru, and
Sure.
he has a show, Investing with Sasha, here on IBMTV. But he informed me that there is actually a betting line out of Las Vegas on the presidential election. I didn't know if you were aware of that. Were
I
you?
am not. What's the line?
Well, it changes every day. At one point, and Sam, there are over unders. Okay.
Sure. Sure.
I just sort of thought that, because you were significantly involved in the stock market, and the way Sasha looks at it, he looks at it as just a gauge because people are using real money. But I'll have to check the lines. I don't know, but I just thought it would be something that you might find interesting.
Well,
You know.
I'll tell you what, I do my best to drown out the noise and focus on what it is I'm responsible for. And
Okay.
it is a challenge. And
Okay.
I've been hanging up on a lot of friends that like to vent to me lately on phone calls
Isn't
by accident, actually.
okay. All by accident. There you have it, right here on American Politics. Well, Sam Capitano, it really is a pleasure to have you on our show. We
Sure.
are here at American Politics trying to do something that is unique and different by actually hearing from people that are not the normal talking heads. We're trying to get the leaders who are out there doing things that most people don't know about. And you certainly are a prominent member in the labor movement, and I might add, up and coming. It's so funny that, did you ever think that you'd be where you are when you began your career?
Yes.
Oh, okay. Well, I take it. There you go. There you go. So,
Not done yet, Bill.
no, I understand. And you're still looking good, Sam.
Thanks. Thank
So,
you, Bill.
with that, I appreciate your time, and I will see you in a few moments. I'm just going to close the show.
Well, thank you for having me.
Well, there we have another edition of American Politics, this time trying to look at the election and through the lens of the labor movement, which is still a force out there that we very rarely get to hear voices from. Sam Capitano is an interesting person. And as our guest, he's just one of many who tell it like it is, which makes him so refreshing as a commentator. Well, I hope you've learned something today, and we will be back with another edition of American Politics. Straightforward analysis and discussions with people in the know and people who are leading our world in ways that we never even thought. For that, this is IBM Television, International Broadcast Media, from broadcasting around the globe, from dictatorships to democracies. I'm your host, Bill Trezevant. Good morning, good afternoon, and good night. Thank you.